This this is the Impressions Exchange Podcast.
Impressions Exchange Podcast.
Where all topics impacting the graphic imaging and printing industry are addressed via in-depth news coverage, analysis, and timely interviews.
Hi, I'm Denise Gustafson, Editorial Director for Printing United Alliance, and the guest host for the special Printing Impressions podcast series in celebration of Women's History Month, highlighting women in the printing industry. During this series, I'll have the opportunity to talk with women from all segments of the industry about their experiences and their journey as a woman in the industry. So today, it is my pleasure to welcome Carrie Figueroa. She's Director of Supply Chain for Myers. So Carrie, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
To get us started, can you tell me a little bit about what you do as Director of Supply Chain?
Sure. As Director of Supply Chain, I'm responsible for managing the procurement department and the material handling department, which controls the inventory and raw material flow throughout our facility.
You're buying the ink and the paper and
Janitorial supplies and presses and anything that you can name goes through my department.
so wow, you're the one with the purse strings.
That's right. It's a fun position to be in.
Most definitely. So how did you start out in the print? How did you get started in the printing industry? I mean, is this something that you said, ooh, I'm going to be in the printing industry. I'm going to be the one dealing with all the procurement. How did you get to where you are today?
Seems like there's two kinds of people, right? You either fall into it or you're born into it.
Mm-hmm.
These veins are full of ink. My dad was in the printing industry for his entire career. He worked for the company that made TV guides.
Oh,
So
fun.
he would always come home with like butt rolls of paper. So it'd be like throwing paper all over the floor, coloring and drawing and that sort of thing. So for me, printing industry was always like super cool, right? You got all this cool stuff. Rubylith, you can cut it out. You can make cool designs, put it on the window. It throws red all over the walls. It was super exciting. So for me, printing was synonymous with art and with creativity and with fun. That was like further reinforced in high school. We had a fantastic graphics department. Starting out in freshman year, you could kind of take that as your elective and go all through high school. So we had cameras, a big old camera in the back room, taking pictures and turning those into t-shirts. And we had a screen printing setup there. We had a t-shirt machine. We had all sorts of stuff. It was fantastic. I would say most of the people that went through that program ended up at UW Stout in the printing industry, which is what I did. I went to Stout after high school for 2 years, and then I transferred to RIT in Rochester, New York for my last 2 years. From there, I took a job in New York City. I was there for about 15 years, working various different jobs, production job. I started out in sales, actually, which was awful. It lasted about 3 or 4 months. And I was like, this is not the career path for me. Then got into production, did a lot of production planning, estimating, that sort of thing. Then I took a job as a buyer at Bulova Watch Company. I worked for their marketing department and handled all of photography and retouching and print buying and sourcing from China, all that kind of stuff. It was really, really fantastic. And then I moved to Minnesota. Got married, had a baby, moved to Minnesota. That 400 square foot Manhattan co-op just wasn't cutting it anymore. So off we go.
Not when you're expanding family. So yeah.
Exactly. So, and then now I've been at Myers for just over 10 years now.
All right, great. I do have to say I might be jealous about something because you had a whole print program at your high school.
Fantastic. Mr. Hogue, our teacher's name was. He was great.
I was actually just introduced to the printing industry in junior high. We had like a technology department and you had to take like a semester or whatnot of tech.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually probably still have the notepad that I made.
Right.
But I mean, I set my own type. I printed it, use the engraver to do like a nameplate and,
Yeah,
all that kind of fun stuff. It was great to be hands-on, but I don't even know if that's even offered now today.
it really should be. The way to get more people into this industry is expose young kids to it. Show them how fun it is. Show them how exciting it is. This is how that's made. Hey, did you know this exists? No, most people don't, right?
Mhm.
And I think it is a great industry to work in, and we need to get young people into the industry.
Like you said, you started from a young age. Your dad would bring home the butt rolls of paper and all the fun stuff that you got to play with, you were touched with as a kid.
Right,
And I think of when I was younger, between kindergarten or first grade, you visit the police department, you visit the firehouse, you go to some of these, and what do kids then leave? I want to be a policeman. I want to be a fireman.
right.
Why not send them to do a field trip of a print shop that does some of the local signs that they see as they're going through their town?
Absolutely.
Or to
Yeah.
see, how this design that this person is working on is now being printed and it's going to be huge. That's going to be on a
Mhm.
billboard.
Mhm. Yeah. Show them the excitement of it all.
Yeah. Because, like you said, print is everywhere right now. People don't think of what's behind it,
Mhm.
and they don't have that knowledge or education to even know that there's a career path that's involved.
Right.
I think that's one of the harder things that the industry is facing just in general, is that trying to get new people in, and how do we get it in? When do you start?
Mhm. It's one of those things too, where the programs are kind of going away. They're evolving into more communications and less technical. It's one of those things where maybe we need to bring back the whole being an apprentice and working through, hey, if you go to this company, they'll show you this path. You start out as an assistant, then you get to, whatever the next thing is that you want to do. I think there needs to be more company involvement with getting new people in. You can't just pluck them out of colleges anymore like you could 15, 20 years ago.
And honestly, for some people, college is not the path.
Right, right.
If you're talking about some of the trades, and maybe some people that learn more in a hands-on role. So
Hmm.
apprenticeships would be perfect
Right.
because they can learn the trade. They can learn, and that's how they learn, is
Hmm.
hands-on, working in the environment. But that's not something that we'd see a push for anymore, even.
Right.
So for you going through the print industry, obviously you had your dad as a role model because he worked in the print industry. Have there been challenges for you as a woman? Granted, you had your dad as a role model, but he's a
Hmm.
man in what
Right.
is kind of a man's world in some ways for printing and manufacturing.
Yeah, it is. I think there's been challenges. There's always challenges, but I think my story is a little uncommon in talking to other women because I didn't have big challenges right off the bat. Went to school, went to RIT. It was obviously male dominated, but I was vice president of the printing fraternity. I just kind of didn't let that get in the way. These guys were my friends. These guys were my peers. When I graduated, I worked for a small company in Manhattan called Milocraft, and it was run by this gruff old Italian guy, Al Milo, right? And he was great. He still is. We're still friends to this day. I still talk to him and find out how he's doing, and he asks about my career and mentorship, right? But that company was great. I worked there for 4 years as a production planner, and there was four production planners in that company. Three of them were women, and I just didn't think anything of it at the time. It was just work, right? But it
Mhm.
wasn't until after I left Milecraft, I was like, wow, that was really unusual, But that, as being an early job in my career, I learned so much because it was so hands on. I learned really the guts of printing. It was really like a second college for me. Not only did I learn you have to do this to get that, or really the intricacies of how to make jobs go through the printing company, I learned how to critically think. It was my job. I had to make it work right. And he was there to help. How do you do this? Why would you do that? He asked questions like that, really building your confidence in your job. So I think having that, and I'm just kind of like a big personality anyway. So having that reinforcement of my skills really gave me the confidence later on in my career.
which is good. It's a very unique situation for you. Most of the
Mhm.
time, department you're going to be working in, you could be the only woman in the room.
Right. And that happened the next job. It
Okay.
switched. I was one of 4 production plant in my next job after Milocraft. So, and I did wake up then and I was like, oh, it's a little different here.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are the older production planners that think that the way I'm doing something is not correct, probably because I'm young and probably because I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not used to that. But like I said, I just kind of plowed ahead. I knew what I knew. I knew that I was right. And that's it.
And it's interesting because even now looking back, you might question, was it because I was a woman or was it because I was young?
Right.
Honestly, now we're older, we're in our careers. We look at some of the young ones that are coming in and we might have the same, they might have new ideas that are doing it differently than how we've done it, how we've always
Right.
done it. Are they wrong? Are they right? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting to see that kind of turns around in some ways. And it might not because of gender, but it could
Right.
just because of youth. And you could say, oh, they don't understand the intricacies of everything else that touches it,
Mm-hmm.
but they still might not be wrong. You know,
Right. Right.
they could have a point. They could have that different perspective, which is kind of interesting because that's where I think it benefits too, is to get those diverse voices, different generations, different
Absolutely.
genders, different races. We all come from
Mm-hmm.
a different spot.
Yep. It helps. It just helps the whole process, right?
Hmm.
Think differently, problem solve differently, look at a whole view, look at things holistically instead of just one way that's always been
Yeah.
when you have just that group think, right?
So for you as a woman, obviously you're leading this department in procurement. How do you empower both yourself and maybe other women that you work with in the workplace, especially in maybe positions that maybe traditionally were male?
I do try to work with vendors that are diverse. I try to hire employees that are diverse when possible, right? You can't always work with that saleswoman over that sales guy, but I do try to give women and minorities and diverse people the opportunity whenever I can. And within my own organization, I've always kind of been that woman that other women come to and talk about things, not in a gossipy way, but hey, this situation happened. How would you handle that?
Mhm.
Or what would you do if this was said to you? I feel honored that I am that person that people will come and talk to. They also know that I won't run off to her management and tattle or say something, but I can also influence upper management when they have questions about, well, Carrie, what do you think about what happened here or whatever? I have that knowledge of what the other women in the company are thinking and feeling about situations.
Mhm. So in a way, you're acting as a mentor, even if there's no specific mentoring program in place, you can be that mentor to some of those women that are within Myers.
Correct.
Through your career, how important, I mean, you've mentioned that you're still in touch with some of the people that you worked with. How
Hmm.
important was it for you to have various role models throughout your
Really
career?
important. Really important. I think everybody has those people in their life that have helped them and have changed them and helped shape them into the people they are or become. I have 2 people that really stand out that did that for me. Al, which I told you about from Milocraft, and my boss at Bulova, Faye Druez was her name. She was fantastic. Al was that gruff, this you got to do this, learn, you got to know how to talk, you have to learn why this material works better than that material, whatever. Faye really taught me how to be politically savvy. Like she had grace when getting what she wanted or what she needed. You didn't have to have that gruffness. And she really taught me that, like, hey, fake it till you make it, which isn't really faking it. It's just kind of taking that leap of faith and going after things that might be a little uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable for a little bit, but trust in yourself and go for it.
And it's interesting that you said the fake it till you make it. I think that's something that women in general kind of feel that way more so than men.
Hmm.
Because there's that, maybe it's an imposter syndrome, maybe I
Right.
can't do this, maybe this isn't right. I don't know if we just doubt ourselves more. Men are
Hmm.
just a little bit more aggressive, but it's interesting, but that's a good life skill that you learn from your role model is just to do it, just to take the confidence and go.
Hmm.
As a leader, are there challenges that you face because you're a woman in a leadership role? And how do you address some of those challenges?
In my own role as a female leader, I work with a lot of men as a buyer. It's just male dominated. And it took me a while to figure out that like male sales, female buyer relationship because it is different. Many salesmen or your average salesman really use like sports as like an icebreaker and sporting events and let's go do this and do that. Women don't want that, or at least I don't want that.
I always say I'm sports neutral, so I have no idea what's
Right.
going on. So,
Exactly. It's just not my thing. I certainly don't want to have like meeting after meeting of like talking about sport. I don't have time for this. I'm busy. Let's like get down to business. How I've kind of like overcome that is when that comes up, it's like, hey, like you said, I'm a sports fan. I'm not really a sports fan. And then I just kind of lead the conversation. Like, hey, I have you here because, blah, blah, blah. We have this problem or that problem, or I need X from you, right? So I just find that I gravitate towards salespeople that are more technical than social in their sales style. If you can help me make my job easier, if you have that technical knowledge, because I ask a lot of questions, I want to know everything that I'm buying. Why is this better than that? Why should I use yours versus theirs? I'm going to ask those questions. And if you can answer those and help me problem solve and help me get the best product, we're going to build a relationship organically, right?
mhm.
You don't need those baseball games and those steak dinners and all of that stuff that's really male centric.
Or even old school
Or it's old school. Absolutely.
in a combination in a way. So yes,
Right.
it might be a little bit male, but it could also be a little bit old school in that we used to have those dinners or lunches and
Mhm.
big productions, and they'd be out for, however long. And you're just like, can we just get to what we need to talk about?
Right. Golf outings and, this
Yes.
and that. But I also find that those same salespeople switch that. Oh, instead of sports, we'll talk about her kids.
Hmm.
No, I don't want to talk about my family, my personal business with you either. Let's stick to neutral ground. Let's stick to why we're here, the business, the reason for the meeting. Social stuff that can come later, but
Especially as you're working with some of these folks, you do develop a relationship with
right,
them. The first or second call, that's not really appropriate. Let's just work through what we need to do
right.
and kind of work with that. So in terms of, I guess, networking, because part
Mhm.
of this is having those relationships with your suppliers, it is in a way is kind of networking. So how important is it for you and for your professional growth to be involved in the community and for you to build your network?
I think it's very important. And I think it's something that I haven't been great at previously. The older I get, the more I realize, like, oh, I really need to focus more on building that community, especially with women. I
Mhm.
do go to the trade shows every year and stay on top of what's happening in the printing industry. But the older I get, the more I think I really need to focus that on women side of that. What are other women doing in their careers and how are they navigating tricky situations or just having a group of people that are on the same level as you or the same path as you. I think that's becoming more and more important to me.
Because we all need that support.
Right.
And in some ways, at that point, we're not competitive. We're peers. We're all
Hmm.
facing the same problems, the same issues, maybe in different ways. How do you
Hmm.
deal with this? How do you deal with that?
Right. The
How,
support network
yeah.
of having other women in the printing industry. It's
Hmm.
just, I think it's important. I think it's necessary. And I think I need more of it in my life. I need to
Yeah.
put myself out there and get on committees or start mentoring or kind
Hmm.
of being more involved.
Because it's hard. I mean, as women, there's a certain amount of work-life balance that we all struggle with. So to have somebody to be a sounding board,
Right.
to ask those questions, how do you deal with this kind of thing? How do you deal with
Hmm.
that? But yeah, but building your network is a great way to do that. One of my favorite questions I ask, and I always save it for last, is a question about advice.
Mhm.
So, knowing what you know now, based on all your years of experience in the printing industry, the different jobs that you've had, what advice would you give to yourself if you were just starting out today?
Just be true to yourself. Don't change yourself because you think others would like you more or would accept you better or you fit more into what that perception is of what they're looking for. Ask questions, learn, keep learning, keep learning. I'm still learning. I'm in an MBA program right now. And at my age, crazy. But it's just one of those things like stay current, stay up to date. Don't get stale. Don't get a narrow perspective. Be open to change. Be open to anything that comes your way.
I think that's great advice for anyone to continue to be curious.
Hmm.
So I think some people can get stuck in that rut
Yeah. Yeah.
and worried, or not worried, but it ends up being just a job. But how can
Right.
you make it more enjoyable?
Right.
How can you continue to grow and expand and be more?
Yep. The more you learn, the more knowledge you have, the more confident you are, the more powerful you feel in your decisions, that you're making the right decisions for yourself and for those around you, your department, your coworkers, your organization in general.
Because honestly, the stronger that you are, the more confident you are, is just going to, like you said, it's going to benefit your coworkers, your team that you're working with, and that strong teams then make strong departments, that make strong company. I mean, it kind of just it builds from that.
Right. Absolutely.
So, Carrie, thank you so much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I've had a really good time chatting with you today.
Thanks. I have as well. So, thanks again, and hopefully, I'll be able to speak with you again soon.
Great. Bye bye.